NASCAR made some changes, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but they're actually good. Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Jet. Welcome back to episode of Inside Lines. Hope you're having a wonderful day. With January 10th, a countdown to the Daytona 500 continues, just 30 some days away. It's going to be here quicker than we know it. And with that, with the 2025 season approaching, meaning we got a lot of rule changes to talk about. And these rule changes, they're actually pretty good. Let's go over it. They made a whole bunch of changes. And before I say it, no changes yet on the playoffs, but it does involve how you enter the playoffs, if that makes sense. We're going to get into that. But first, let's start off with one of the biggest controversies of 2024, and that was the damaged vehicle policy. It has not been liked since it was first implemented a few years ago. No, I don't like it. Nobody likes it. Drivers don't like it. It's confusing. Nobody likes it. It was very evident on how fractured this rule was at Talladega, where some drivers got towed and were able to fix, some didn't. Just a whole lot of confusion. Well, NASCAR said, you know what? Let's just make it easy and get rid of it completely. So for the rule changes of 2025, it states as, quote, the damaged cars that are either driven or towed to the garage will be out of the race. However, in 2025, cars will be permitted to continue in the race after repairs in the garage. Officials will continue to maintain a 7-minute time limit, 8 for Atlanta, for repairs made on pit road. Any repairs exceeding the 7-minute limit must be made in the garage, where no clock will be kept on repair work. Teams will be penalized if a car reaches its pit box to rejoin the race and the DVP clock expires before it reaches pit exit. Now, in the case of if you need to be towed back, for example, if you do have a flat tire, NASCAR will tow you back to the garage where you can get whatever you need adjusted and get back in a race. For that, honestly, if you have a flat tire and you just need to tow back, I don't know why you can't just tow them back to pit road, why you have to tow them back to the garage. But overall, love this change. This was such a needed change. The DVP clock, it was not necessary to begin with, but you know what that means, right? It means we're going to see those monster cars back on the racetrack. That's one of the things I just love about with NASCAR is that you can have a car that literally has an entire hood missing or a side panel missing and they're still racing. I mean, I love it. I love it. So to see them bringing that back, to have drivers and teams be able to work on their cars and get back onto the racetrack, I absolutely love that. It also makes, I think, from a championship perspective, it makes it much more interesting because drivers, they may need just one more point or two more points. They can work on the car, get back on the racetrack. Things may happen. They get those 1 or 2 points and boom, they're back into contention. So I think it adds another layer of making the race much more interesting when you have teams that are able to work on the cars and get back out on the racetrack. So this was a much needed change. It just makes things much more simple in order to consume as race fans, that we know what's going on instead of being left out in the dark wondering what the hell is even the rule book. So this was a much needed change. Good on NASCAR for making this. Now, this next rule change is regarding playoff points. Now, this is a direct result of 2 incidents. One, Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Coke 600 back in 2023, I believe, with Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin. And what happened at last year's Memorial Day weekend at the Indy 500 and Coke 600 regarding Kyle Larson, where Larson decided to compete the 500 and miss the 600 entirely. NASCAR updated the rulebook once again to say, quote, playoff points will be forfeited if a waiver is granted after a suspension or if a driver chooses to skip a race. Playoff points will not be forfeited in the event of a medical absence, missing a race for the birth of a child or a family emergency, or if age restrictions prevent a driver from racing a full season. Again, like this change, I do feel like that after what happened with Larson specifically, that it put NASCAR in a very uncomfortable box, something that I didn't think they were anticipating on making. So I do like that this is going to be the rule from this point onwards. So I do like that change. And I also like them saying, listen, if you get suspended, all your playoff points are gone. Hopefully that will encourage drivers from not right hooking their opponents, since that is a very dangerous move. And I think with them knowing that, oh, it's the playoffs, who cares? You know, or I have a win already, I'm going to be in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. I feel like that it makes drivers do a lot more crazy things knowing that they have the buffer. Well, now with this implemented, where, hey, you do that stuff, your playoff points are gone. They are out of there. I think that will trigger in the mindset of drivers that want to get retaliation, like right hooking a driver, knowing that that is in the back of their head, will probably force them to go, you know what? Let me just chill for a little bit and not do something stupid. Next up is another rule change, or I should say an addition, as in the aftermath of what took place at last year's Martinsville Fall race, when we saw race manipulation from the Chevy teams of Ross Chastain, Austin Dillon, and William Byron, and the Toyota teams of Bubba Wallace and Christopher Bell. So because of what happened in those two incidents, again, it made the sport look like a joke. NASCAR realized they needed to crack down on that. So this is what they're saying now. OEMs, they could get penalized for doing something like what we saw at Martinsville last fall. NASCAR officials clarified the penalty structure for rules violations made by OEMs. Such infractions may result in loss of manufacturer's points or a reduction in wind tunnel testing time or computational fluid dynamic test runs. Competition officials adjusted the wording for the 100% rule of performance obligations, changing the focus on competitors who, quote, artificially alter the finishing positions to competitors who, quote, manipulate the outcome of the event. So basically, in terms of the 100% rule, they're getting away from that in terms of just driving all out as hard as you can, instead of shifting of if there's any form of manipulation. That's the rule. Any form of manipulation in general, NASCAR will crack down on that. It's much more black and white than the 100% rule, because you could look at the 100% rule as, yeah, I'm racing 100% for my team, you know, Joe Gibbs Racing or Chevrolet. Like it's much more vague, the 100% rule. This one, and it cracks down more on manipulation in general, manipulate the outcome of a race. It's much more clear, much more black and white. Again, a much needed change. Now, the biggest change in my eyes, at least, or I should say probably the most controversial one, on Twitter, I wasn't a big fan of it. Now, thinking about it more and more, I'm interested in seeing how this will be played out. NASCAR is enacting an open exemption provisional, or an OEP. What this basically means that if NASCAR sees, or let's say a world-class driver like Elio Castroneves wants to compete in a NASCAR race, NASCAR will say, you know what? You're a world-class driver, you have a lot of significance, a lot of people want to see you race, you get an automatic spot in the race. It doesn't matter if you don't qualify, you will be in the race no matter what. Another change is that if, let's say, it exceeds the 40 car limit, NASCAR will up the car field to 41 to make room for that open exemption provisional driver, that world-class driver. The full rule change states as such, and quote, competition officials compare the new provisional spot to the promoter's choice provisional that's used in some forms of short track racing to guarantee a spot for a special or invited entrant. The open exemption provisional rule would only become a factor if the entry list exceeded the Cup Series current starting field maximum of 40 cars, and eligible drivers would need pre-approval by NASCAR on a case-by-case basis, with racing experience and accolades carrying significant weight. So this part is interesting because, according to, I think it was Bob Proctor's, number one, Trackhouse already, they did this with Elio Castroneves. They already gave an invitation or told NASCAR about this, and NASCAR approved it already. On top of that, this was part of the 2025 charter agreement. So the charter teams, that includes 25 in the front row, all knew about this months ago before we ever heard about that. So that is something I did not know. My thoughts on this, I'm conflicted. On one side, I get it. NASCAR, they are a promotion. They are trying to promote the race, get as many people watching. Having a world-class driver like an Elio Castroneves be in the field will drum up some more international eyeballs. I get that on one side. However, I have a couple of issues with this. Number one, Elio Castroneves is guaranteed in the Daytona 500. That's a problem. One of the best things about, for example, the dual races is there was going to be a storyline. You have a 4-time Indy 500 champion in Elio Castroneves and a 7-time NASCAR champion in Jimmy Johnson, both having to fight their way into the Daytona 500. So you have big name drivers compile that with small teams trying to make it into the big field. I felt like it would have made the duels much more compelling. It would have made the duels it would have made the duels a lot more interesting than it has been in years. Now you're throwing that away. It does hurt the allure of the duels, knowing that, oh yeah, he's already gonna be in the field. Who cares now? I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. I would be okay if you did this for every other race. I'm fine with that. But for the Daytona 500, it should be. I don't like that. I don't like guaranteed spots in general, but especially for something like this, I'm not a fan of. Also, what constitutes as a driver and their accolades carrying significant weight? Is it, do you have to win the Indy 500, or do you have to be in a major racing promotion like IndyCar or F1? What if you're like one of the best in, let's say, Super GT or DTM? Like, what constitutes as drivers, world-class drivers with accolades that carry significant weight? That's, in my eyes, that's a vague way of looking at it, because what determines you to have significant accolades that make you an automatic entry into the field? Now, one thing I do find interesting is that apparently Daytona only has 40 spots. They only have 40 pit stalls, and it looks like we're going to be having 41 drivers in the field for the Daytona 500. So if that's the case, how is that going to work when I have like early 2000s at Dover all over again? We're going to be sharing pit stalls now, but I'm conflicted on this one. Again, I understand the change by NASCAR implementing this, and I feel like it would encourage international drivers a lot more to want to participate in the event, knowing that, hey, I'm going to race. I have an automatic spot. So I get that. I get the mindset. I get the reasoning. I just worry. I'm not a fan of them guaranteeing for the 500. I do feel like that still should be something where you have to race your way in. And also worry about how NASCAR will determine what constitutes as significant weight in terms of accolades that matter. Does it have to be, if you're an IndyCar F1, like what constitutes as that? That part I'm a bit iffy on. Also, let's say in a situation where we look at a couple years ago when Travis Pastrana was in the Daytona 500. Let's play hypothetical here, and it's Pastrana and Castroneves. They're both going to want to qualify their way into the 500. Do you allow both of them? Do you allow one of them? And if so, again, which one constitutes as more weight? I know Indy 500 has much more weight. I'm just giving an example. What if you have multiple world-class drivers that want to compete and it exceeds 41 spots? How do you then determine who gets the position and who doesn't? Those are things that I think could come up down the line that may put NASCAR in a very uncomfortable position. But overall, I really do like the changes. What are your thoughts in the comment section down below on these changes by NASCAR? Do you like it? Do you don't? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. And as always, until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thanks for watching.
You can't tell me now about time. Do you know how many lines I done put down, vibes I done sent out? But we ain't here to dig. I'll up the market till they come red carpet the kids. Success still the target. Soon I'll be crossing that bridge, but can't bring everybody with me. Family only. I got some people think I owe a favor, barely know me. That's why my focus on the road. It's all I know. I see them sticking close to play the wall.